Hello and welcome back to the weekly wrap. I'm sitting here at IRCV at Race Control and I've got Simon Dryden, our race director here. What a week, Simon.
Yeah, it's been absolutely amazing, Martin. You know, you would think in an event where you'd had 4 starts, you'd get 3 away clearly, but we've had 2 postponed starts out of the 3 we've had. So it's been quite a bit of work and quite difficult to get done, but it is with great relief that we can see those 18 boats on the water now.
So fantastic. Look, let's just see what's been happening this week.
The scheduled start for our main fleet was 2 p.m. on Sunday, March 25, and by Saturday afternoon most of the 15 starters were already at Blairgowrie Yacht Squadron, and like Force 11 crew member Tristan Gourlay and his father Ken were relaxing. But up in the tower at Race Control things were less relaxed. They'd been watching the weather all day and the forecast didn't look good at all for start time. At just on 6 o'clock, race director Simon Dryden made an announcement.
And it's with that in mind, looking at the forecast, talking to the Bureau, getting advice from various computer models, it has been decided that we will postpone tomorrow's start.
Reaction to the announcement from the competitors was overall very positive.
I think it's great, yeah, it's really good.
Oh well, you know, it's a tough decision, but I think it's the right one, yeah.
And I'm not surprised at all, and it's common sense.
It is what it is, and we just need to get on with it. So.
Yeah, it throws out a whole new set of questions now, I guess, so.
Apart from the crews needing to think on these questions, the celebrations at Portsea Pier for the following day would need to be rescheduled as well. Most of that fell to George Shaw, who remained upbeat.
But tomorrow's another day, and we'll have another great time here at Blairgowrie.
One item that did go ahead as planned was the farewell dinner at BYS, and competitors, friends and family had a great evening. George managed to reschedule 2 of the main attractions, the Navy Band, who now performed during the afternoon at BYS, and the Roulettes moved their fly past a bit further along the coast and performed spectacularly overhead. The day at BYS was certainly a relaxing one, and by lunchtime the good news had come through that the weather was set to improve. The race start would be rescheduled for 3 p.m. on Monday. Monday morning's weather briefing confirmed that even though the wind hadn't really dropped much, by early afternoon things were certainly expected to settle. Crews prepared their boats and said their goodbyes. Around 2:30, all competing boats were off Portsea Pier. Some crews took it easy, while others tested out sail combinations for the start. There was a further delay of 30 minutes due to shipping traffic at the heads. Then at 3:25 the countdown sequence began, and they were off.
So we finally got our start on Monday. Simon, tell us a bit more about that start. A bit wild, wasn't it?
Well, it was really interesting. You know, when it's one of the hardest part when you're doing this race management job, you've got to decide when's a fair time to start and a safe time to start. And we delayed on Sunday, and it was starting to get in my clutch a little bit that the weather was supposed to moderate and didn't quite moderate as much as we expected by race time. But we were really, really relieved that at start time the fleet were really conservative. They took it easy, they put their reefs in, they put their smaller jibs in, and they all got away safely. And the next thing is that because we go through Port Phillip Heads, we've got the shipping channels and we have to keep out of the shipping channels. And all the boats were very obedient and obeyed us, and it was with great relief that we saw them turn left and head for Gabo Island after the start.
It was fairly wild and wet though, wasn't it? I mean, I saw Allegro, they were flying.
Yeah, look, it was one of those days where a big powerful boat that weighs 35 tonnes like Allegra can handle a bit of sail, and they put it up and they were going hard. And it's really interesting to see in that group of boats is Allegra is sailing quite competitively. So it's a big 35-tonne boat, but it's 66 foot long against 40-foot boats, so it's doing quite well.
Mind you, Next Bar had it going too. They were flying too.
You would have to say, looking at the Next Bar boat and its crew, they are looking the most professional amongst us. And did they not only have the flash gear, but they looked really flash at the start. First across the line, looking really well controlled, neat, and their strategies thus far have been perfect.
They were pretty slick. But look, before we talk a bit more about the race, what about our front runners? Morning Star, The Edge, Bartolome?
My God, Pete and Joe on Morning Star, what a set of champions they've turned out to be. They started first, and they have kept a 300-mile gap from The Edge for the whole week. They have never let them get any closer. Every time they get a few miles closer, they eke out back to that lead again. So for a little 34-foot boat, they are just doing the most amazing thing.
And the edge is hanging on. I noticed Bartolome had a pretty unusual track there for
Oh my God, did Bartolome take the mad snail drawing all over our tracker.
Yeah.
So anybody who hasn't seen it, we'll show you a picture now, but they really suffered from going too close inshore, and that took them 3 days to get out. And while they were next to the edge, they gave up 500 miles in getting the strategy wrong.
But good to see they've actually clawed back on the edge last time I looked.
Oh, look, it's fantastic in that you would have thought, nah, they're gone, but they're back. They've caught up 300 of that 500 miles that they gave away. So they're back in with a chance.
Now the 40s, I see Nextspur and our friends Lord Jiminy and Matrix Reloaded, they're having a bit of a tussle, but Nextspur seems to be on top at the moment.
Well, the interesting thing for those of you who don't know, the Matrix Reloaded, this is a Class 40 association, and Matrix Reloaded is hull number 5. Lord Jiminy is about hull number 105, and Nextspur's hull number 121. So you can see obviously that Nextspur is the latest generation, but Nextspur and Lord Jiminy look fairly similar, so I don't think the race is over, but Matrix is there to keep them honest. So really interesting for the next week as they get the difference in weather conditions is who's going to be faster at what with particular wind speed.
Be interesting. Now Kraken's doing pretty well out of the 3600s, aren't they?
Well, it's interesting when you look at the boats is they're all much the same, and it's just strategy wise, and you'd have to say they all got down to Wilson's Prom in a pretty straight line along the rum line, but going from the Prom to Gabo Island has proved quite difficult, and there have been people going along the coast and people out to sea, and so I would have thought that Maverick and Kraken would have followed each other, but they've split apart, and the two behind have paid a bit of a price.
Well, let's see who comes out on top. I noticed a couple of the boats, Red Jacket, Utopia, taking the wide line on the Gabo there.
Yeah, it's been really interesting, this race, and it's one of the things that's amazing now is that you can see that all of our boats now have technology on them which gives them routing advice. Whereas in the past they never had routing advice, so they would sail the rum line. Whereas nowadays everybody's taking different options and going east and west of the rum line, so it's making it a much more tactical and interesting race.
Now the week ahead, Simon, that's interesting now. Let's just work through the weather. The northern boats, what are they looking at?
Yeah, so our three boats are really now in the difficult position of where they need to decide their strategy for going through the Solomon Islands and to the equator. So the models that you will see while I'm talking to you it is really quite difficult to choose the path, and we're looking that they're in 5 or 6 days they're going to be up to the equator, and there is tricky weather, tricky winds, and then we also have the remainder of the cyclone which is also going to make their paths tricky. But looking at the fleet, they should move fairly well. There's plenty of wind, but there's plenty of holes, so it's going to be quite tricky sailing for them. Inside
or outside the current?
Well, the interesting thing is the remains of the cyclone is forcing the boats to the coast. So it's really narrowing down the options, and so where they go from there is going to be interesting. But if you look at the models that we're seeing now, you'll see that there are 4 distinct paths that the models are recommending.
Yep. Now we've got a starter on Sunday coming up, Chinese Whisper.
Oh, it's going to be very exciting, Martin. Here we've got a state-of-the-art 62-footer that is sailed by a professional lot of sailors, and it's going to go fast. So it's going to be, while only a single start, it's going to be super exciting. Again, it's going to be really interesting to see how that boat that can do 25 to 30 knots, how they'll go chasing the fleet.
Except it's going to be a bit light, isn't it?
Well, the thing that's clear in this race is because it's a latitude race and the wind changes as you go up, is that you don't keep the wind forever. So who keeps the wind for longest is the one who will sail the best.
All right, so we'll see how that goes. We'll be back to you again next week with another weekly wrap.